So everybody knows of Goliath, and most people have heard of Og of Bashan. But I just wanted to put a list here of some other giants that people may not be aware of, that are named in the Bible. We have Lami, which was Goliath's brother, Sippai, or Saph, as some translations call him, Ishbi Benob, Anak. We have mention of the children of Anak when they're talking about the Canaanites. Ahiman, Seshai, and Talmai believe that they were brothers. Then we have an unnamed giant with 6 fingers and 6 toes, and an unnamed Egyptian giant. All of these are mentioned in Scripture, plus many others, because you've got mentions of the Canaanite giants, the Amalekites, the Amorites, the Ananites. I mean, all of the ites pretty much in Scripture are you're going to be able to trace back to a Nephilim lineage. But this last one's interesting, and especially with what you said your next show is going to be on. Um, the Bible tells us that Nimrod began to become a mighty one. And the phrase used there has connotations of through some form of ritual. There's debate whether that was a sexual ritual or whether it was genetic manipulation. Um, I lean towards genetic manipulation based
I,
off of some of what you just read.
I do too.
Yeah. Um, and this to me provides evidence that he began to become. So this gives evidence for genetic manipulation that someone could become a Nephilim. And this also helps to support my next slide.
Wait,
Um,
hold on, real quick before you get on that. So on this slide right here, he's got extra biblical text. So I know a lot of people know how I roll. I consider Jubilees and personally, I consider Jubilees and Enoch scriptures, and some people don't, and that's okay. And they just view it as maybe something interesting to read. So I just want to give that disclaimer or whatever. But anyways, go ahead.
yes,
Small matter.
I put the safe words, extra biblical
Yeah,
text, because I'm like
Steve
you.
would like to do that in his book.
Yeah, I believe these were removed from the scriptures, that they were originally there, and some of them are still in some versions as canon.
Yeah, like the Ethiopic
Absolutely.
scriptures.
So, but the texts I'm referring to when they mention genetic manipulation, I believe that our own what's considered canonized scripture, the passage about Nimrod beginning to become, lends credence to what these other texts are saying, which is
Yeah.
really interesting. It can really shake up the way we view scripture, and it can make it a lot more interesting in certain aspects.
Yeah, we get a lot of details about these rebellious angels or watchers in Jubilees and Enoch that we don't get in the scriptures or what we refer to as the canon.
Absolutely. And it kind of brings us to this next slide here. I've got some strange pictures. You don't
Yeah, they
always
are.
think of these. You don't always think of these when you read the Bible.
Nope.
But the funny thing is, there is evidence, that these more than likely existed. The book of Enoch goes further, and it reveals that the fallen angels begin to sin against the animals and begin to teach man to sin against the animals, kind of like the passage we just read in Jubilees. They taught the mixing of species via genetic manipulation in an effort to defy God and begin the process of polluting His creation. Um, this mixture resulted in animal-human hybrids, and it laid the groundwork for the creation of many creatures that would become famous in what we call mythology. Depending on who you're talking to, they may call it history. This first picture here is supposed to represent a cockatrice, and I believe the second one is supposed to represent a harpy. And there's actually references to both of those in what's considered canonized scripture. So let's take a peek real quick at just some of the wild, what people would consider to be legendary creatures that the Bible does talk about. We've got the Nephilim, which is the topic of this. We've got the behemoth, the Leviathan, unicorn, satyrs, dragon, cockatrice, phoenix, and even Lilith. Now there's a lot of controversy surrounding Lilith.
Yep.
we'll stay away from that because I don't believe I don't believe some of the tales of Lilith are biblical.
Yeah,
I believe
I'm not gonna touch on that one either.
yeah, I think we'll find a more accurate representation of her in Scripture. Satyrs appear twice in the King James translation, and most people may never realize that. And it appears both in the book of Isaiah. It says, we get the name satyr for this mythical beast from the Hebrew word, and I do not know how to pronounce it. I'm going to say Sair, maybe, and it's Strong's word number H8163. And we can read it here. It says, "But the wild beast of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures. The owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there." That's Isaiah 13:21. Then if we look at Isaiah 34:14, "The wild beast of the desert shall also meet with the wild beast of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow, and the screech owl also shall rest there, and find for herself a place of rest." So the satyrs mentioned by name, so are cockatrices. And when you talk about this to people, that they think you're crazy when they first hear of it because of our understanding of these creatures. But they're mentioned by name 4 times in the King James translation.
It's
And they
scriptural.
come absolutely, and they come from the Hebrew word Sepha, maybe Sepha, Strong's H6848.
You gave me your best shot, brother.
Yeah, that's rough, and you can find it in Isaiah 11:8, 14:29, 59:5, and Jeremiah 8:17. I put the 14:29 here for a reference. It says, "Rejoice not thou, whole Palestina, because the Lord of him that smote thee is broken. For out of the serpent's root shall come forth a cockatrice, and his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent." Now, isn't that some vivid imagery?
Just like Revelation.
Yeah. So, in the previous passage that I read on this slide, where it's talking about the screech owl and it's talking about the owl, many translations, word for word, more direct translations translate that to Lilith. And you can see on the screen there's a representation of Lilith. She has the owls on each side to represent her. It is believed that this is where we get our legend of Lilith, or the night monster. Some translations put it night monster. Some translations put it Lilitu, which is another derivative of Lilith. So that's a very interesting topic, because the satyrs are also referred to goat demons at one point. And if anybody knows about the scapegoat, the Jewish tradition of the scapegoat, where they sent a goat off into the wilderness to find Azazel, which was believed to be a goat demon. There's so many scriptural references that you can tie into these if you just sit down and take the time to look at them.
Yeah, and Enoch talks about Azazel as well.
Yes. One of my favorite was the linemen of Moab, because it just shows that animal-human hybrid wasn't strange to the people of this time.
Nope.
And 2 Samuel 23:20 says, "And Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada," who I love these names, "the son of a valiant man of Kabzeel, who had done many acts, he slew 2 lion-like men of Moab, and went down also and slew a lion in the midst of a pit in the time of snow." So the fact that lion-like men are mentioned, and then it says also he slew a lion, lets you know that they're not using the same phrase to describe the same thing here.
Yep.
I think that one is a great scriptural proof of genetic manipulation and the existence of animal-human hybrids in those days.